Is there a chance that they got it all wrong in the Scott Peterson case? Is there a chance that he did not kill Lacey Peterson, that he just happened to be out fishing in that very same lake where they found Lacey and his unborn child's body? He just happened to be out there, way out of the way, on Christmas Eve, fishing for fish that he didn't even have the right equipment to fish for. Is any of that just a random possibility? And all the other rather odd coincidences that point to Scott Peterson being guilty of murder, which he was ultimately convicted of all the way back in 2004, 20 years ago. Today, the LA Innocence Project is taking up the case. They're not saying a whole lot about it. We did reach out for them to them for comment, but other than just being aware that they're taking it up, that's what we know. And should be noted, it's the LA Innocence Project. This is not the Innocence Project. I know they're kind of getting perturbed, and a lot of people going to them going, why are you taking up this case? The LA Innocence Project, if you'd like to lodge your complaints against anyone, is the correct one to go to. Joining me to discuss, Shavaun Scott, psychotherapist and author. Scott Peterson, it's a case, a tale as old as time, if you will. What are your thoughts on this coming back all these years later, here with this possibility? Maybe there's some new evidence. They're specifically taking a look at a van that was on fire and they believe might have some DNA or blood on a mattress that was in the back of it.
Well, we sure don't want the wrong person to be in prison. And, so I think anytime there is potential new evidence, it's a good thing to take a look at it. So I wouldn't quibble with that. But you don't need to be a mental health clinician to say that Scott Peterson was not a very nice person. And the relationship with Amber Fry, I think if that alone was going to convict someone, that would have done it. It was really appalling
Mhm.
to listen to. I re-listened to those audio tapes this week with, the conversations where he just lied so fluidly to
Mhm.
her. And that, I think, was the nail in the coffin originally. I
Mhm.
mean, he looks so psychopathic. So, but yeah, if there's new evidence,
Yeah.
let's look at it. We don't want the wrong person. And just because you're a slimy husband, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a murderer. So,
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly the thing that we're looking at. I mean, you look at the Alec Murdaugh trial, things of that nature, where these things might get a second shot. Again, you look, they're horrible human beings, but
mhm,
again, doesn't always make somebody a murderer. If you're a psychopath, it doesn't always make you a
no,
murderer
no.
as well. Let's talk about Scott Peterson a little bit, because I think a lot of people are kind of going back and re-examining this case and watching some of those documentaries and hearing those phone calls. And I think a lot of people are wondering, what is wrong with this guy? How is he able to pull off this ruse to Amber Fry and to everyone else, and seemingly not have any sort of emotional connection to the reality of what's going on around him, and what he's lying to everyone about?
Yeah, psychopathic is the right word because
Okay.
this is certainly a person who, when he made a call to Amber and pretended to be in Paris, at the same time, his missing wife's memorial or the candlelight vigil was going on. Um, and he sounded so cheery and so happy. This is a person without a moral compass. And that's something I don't think any of us could put ourselves in that position and imagine even doing that. So it certainly seems like this is a person who doesn't have the same moral standards as the rest of us. And we can only guess that there were other women he had been potentially involved with and other things that he did that if we knew the whole story, we would find this guy kind of morally repugnant.
What makes someone like Scott Peterson who he is? I mean, how does someone develop into that sort of a character? I mean, and it's seemingly it's like something is missing there. Like you said,
Yeah.
moral compass. But what's going on up there that this is this something where is this a development thing from childhood, some sort of trauma where you end up blocking out or not using that because it was a survival mechanism at some point in time and it never kind of got realigned. Obviously, it's different for everyone, but if you were to take a look at this and what you know about Scott Peterson, what would you say?
We used to think that everything that went wrong with people, I mean, there was a phase in psychology where it was all looked at as trauma, and trauma is significant for some people. But I think when we're looking at this kind of person, a person who's a chronic liar, who doesn't seem to have a moral compass, we are looking at psychopathy. And there's been a lot of research in the last 20 years on what creates psychopathy. And it's really not abuse, it's really not trauma in childhood. We think that there are people who are born different.
Mhm.
And when you combine that difference, maybe with getting away with it very successfully, so rather than being punitively parented, a lot of them have been treated, a bit special. And so they develop this sense of grandiosity, they get away with things, and they actually have differences in the brain, in two parts of the brain, the amygdala, which is the fear center of the brain. And most people, as they grow up, that amygdala lets them know, uh-oh, I don't want to do something wrong. I don't want to get in trouble. And in a psychopathic person, that part of the brain is very small.
Mhm.
And then there's another brain difference. It's in the ventral medial prefrontal cortex. And that's a part that wires to the amygdala. And that's what allows them to have compassion and empathy for other people. And so the wiring there between those two parts of the brain seems faulty. And I do think that there are biological reasons for it. They're just different from the
Sure.
get-go.
I mean, and with that being said, then that allows them to view life through the prism that they do, and then carry out the things that they do. Everyone who's psychopathic is not a murderer. It's probably
Right.
actually a very low percentage of people who are psychopathic that
Yes.
actually go out
Yes.
and commit it.
Yes.
But it also doesn't make for a very healthy individual when it comes to interpersonal relationships
No.
and things of
No.
that nature. If someone is like, I think this is what I think struck so many people with Scott Peterson is seems like somebody we all know.
Mhm.
He just seems like an average guy. If you take the
Mhm.
psychopath, because on the surface, it's not glaring. I mean, until you
Right.
you start digging into this and going, wait a second, you're not in Paris. You're at your wife's candlelight vigil, and you're telling your girlfriend that you're watching the new year come in, and people are
Mhm.
searching for your dead or your wife that you
Mhm.
seemingly don't know where she is.
Mhm.
Obviously, we know more of the truth to that, at least how the case played out. All that being said, uh, is there anything with people like that that is redeemable? Is psychopathy, or being a psychopath, is that something that can ever be fixed? If someone is
Yeah.
diagnosed there, they realize they have it, others realize they have it, and they go, I don't want to be this person. I don't want to function this way. Is this something where sorry, you just kind of got to learn to cope, or can those sort of things be corrected in someone if recognized?
Yeah, we really can't change the brain. I
Hmm.
mean, we'd love to, right? Give
Yeah,
me a magic wand. There's a lot of brains I would like to change.
sure.
But a very intelligent person who has psychopathic tendencies, they often don't get into legal trouble. And they may not ever commit violence, but they're more apt to commit financial crimes or, these serial relationships. They do that kind of thing, but they can seem like normal people. And when we're looking at let's just call it a mental health condition or a mental health difference. We can treat mental illness. So things like anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, those are mental illnesses that we can treat. Medication can be helpful. And a lot of things that you can teach people in therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy is very effective for lots of things. But when it comes to disorders of character, and this is really how the personality has developed, typically those folks, they're quite happy with themselves the way they are. So their
Hmm.
motivation for change is minimal. And we go into more of a how do we manage folks like
Hmm.
that? And that's where, some kind of involvement, whether it's with a therapist, a probation officer, parole officer, you look more at how can we help them see that uh, staying on a more moral path is going to benefit them and keep them out of trouble. And so it's a kind of a different way of looking at it.
There's no magic pill for it. It's more so they have to want to be motivated. I mean, are there examples of that happening? I mean, my guess would be it would be maybe something in an interpersonal relationship where the person really wants that to be good. They realize, or they come to the conclusion they're diagnosed with something like that. I want to make that sort of thing work, but you realize my way of thinking is so out there. Is that successful? Is that common that ever
Yeah.
happens?
I think it can happen to some degree, but again, it's more like there's a carrot that
Mhm.
they see, my life really will go better if I
Mhm.
follow a straighter path here. And so
It's
you can work with them in reinforcing, look, if you want to stay out of jail, if you want to stay out of trouble, if you don't want these outrageously disturbing personal relationships with all the drama, here are some techniques you can use to manage yourself better. And yeah,
yeah.
I think there are a lot of people, and I think, as I say, good probation officers can serve as a motivator in that
Mhm.
way for people who do get into the criminal justice system. You can teach people that
Mhm.
life works better when you follow a better path.
It's one of those things where most of us, with healthier minds would get from point A to point B by going this way, but in order for them to get from point A to point B, they have to take a little bit different path. Their motivations are a bit different than the rest of us. Is that accurate?
Yeah, they need more structure in life. So I think the more that they get some kind of external structure because they don't police themselves very
Mhm.
well. And so they really do need that. And it's also probably relevant that psychopathy is on a continuum.
Mhm.
And so you have some people who have those traits and tendencies, but it's not extreme.
Mhm.
And those are people who are more apt to learn from experience. And often in adolescence, because when we say this is a neurodevelopmental disorder, their brain is different.
Yeah.
As kids, you'll see some of these manipulative traits. And I think if parents are able to see it, to understand it, and to parent them really effectively, that may help diminish it as they grow into adulthood. But not all parents do that. And some parents tolerate a
Yeah.
lot of lying and manipulation from their
Hey,
kids.
it's Tony Brueski. If you like the podcast, be sure to like, subscribe, and press that bell so you don't miss any of our updates on the cases we're following for you right here at the Hidden Killers podcast from True Crime Today. And thanks